Welcome to this amazing site of Petra. This is an absolutely incredible place. It's one of the 7 wonders of the world and a UNESCO site. It's Jordan's most popular visited tourist site and, in fact, in all the Middle East. With breathtaking buildings carved into deep red rock cliffs, it's a mystical place sought out by many. It also has many biblical events that have happened here and prophesied events that may very well take place here in the future. In this video, we'll look at the location of Petra. We'll take a trip through time as we behold its history. We'll see its outstanding sites like the famous Treasury, carved tomb where Indiana Jones was filmed, other monumental tomb carvings, the amazing monastery that sits high upon a mountain, the remains of the ancient city, a huge theater, and walk the deep canyon into the city that has breathtaking walls on each side, and more. You will be amazed at this site as we see it unfold. This will be a unique video looking at every aspect of this ancient place that has captured the imagination of millions. So let's explore and experience this amazing site. Now let's look at the location of this amazing place. Petra is located about 50 miles south of the Dead Sea and 170 miles southwest of modern Amman, Jordan. Located in the southwest of Jordan near the town of Wadi Musa, the landscape surrounding Petra is absolutely stunning. It has red rocky mountains at the east of the Araba Valley. Ancient Petra's main access is via a narrow crevice called the Siq, or pronounced Siq, which winds for about a mile through the mountainous terrain. The Siq provided an excellent natural defense for Petra's inhabitants. Many moviegoers are familiar with the Siq and the Treasury tomb of Petra, which were featured in the 1989 film Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. To support the ancient city's large population, its inhabitants maintained an extensive water system, including dams, cisterns, rock-carved water channels, and ceramic pipes. Now let's turn back the pages of history and let's walk through time as we see the history of this amazing site. The name Petra, which means rock in Greek, replaced the biblical name Selah, which is Hebrew for rock. The first inhabitants of Petra were the descendants of Esau, called the Edomites. Esau moved to this area from the Negev region in around 1900 BC, according to Genesis 36. Remains from early periods confirmed that the Edomites occupied this area as well. The Edomites raided traveling caravans and then hid in Petra for protection. They became arrogant and abusive. For this reason, God judged them. In Obadiah 3, it says, "The arrogance of your heart has deceived you, the one who lives in the clefts of the rock, on the height of his dwelling place, who says in his heart, who will bring me down to earth? Though you make your home high like the eagle, though you set your nest among the stars, from there I will bring you down, declares the Lord." In around 400 BC, the Nabateans, the descendants of Nabaioth, the firstborn of Ishmael, Abraham's firstborn son by Sarah's handmaid Hagar, occupied Petra and made it the capital of their kingdom. The vast majority of what can be seen today was carved into the sheer rock face by the Nabateans. They became extremely wealthy and turned the city into an important location on a trade route that linked China, India, and southern Arabia with Egypt, Syria, Greece, and Rome. Petra became so influential that it became the capital of the Nabatean kingdom that stretched from Damascus to Petra and beyond. The Nabateans, living and trading in Petra, soon accumulated significant wealth, and an envious Greek empire attacked the city in 312 BC by the Seleucid forces, who failed to seize the city. The Nabateans successfully fought back the Greek invaders by taking advantage of the city's mountainous terrain. The mountains effectively served as a natural wall, buttressing Petra. Under Nabatean rule, Petra prospered as a spice trade center that involved China, Egypt, Greece, and India. The city's population during this time swelled to around 30,000 inhabitants. Because the Nabatean kingdom was so prosperous, the Roman Empire set its sights on it. The Romans defeated the Nabateans in around 106 AD, and Petra became part of the Roman province of Arabia. The Romans enlarged and glorified the city even more by building a Cardo, which is a main huge street. They also built a large theater that accommodated around 6,000 spectators, and other buildings and improvements. It appears that in around 200 AD, a flash flood did catastrophic damage to the city, dealing it a major blow. After the Roman Empire was divided in 330 AD, Petra was ruled by the Byzantine, or the eastern half of the Roman Empire, until Muslim occupation in the 7th century AD. In 363 AD, an earthquake destroyed many of its buildings, dealing Petra another blow. And again in 551 AD, another earthquake struck, causing a significant population reduction. Christian churches and a large monastery were built here during the Byzantine period. The Islamic invasion occurred in the 7th century, bringing Muslim reign to Petra. Around 1100 AD, the Crusaders conquered the Muslims and built a fort and outpost at Petra. The Crusaders would occupy Petra until the latter part of the 12th century. Due to the changes in trade routes, earthquakes, and more, by the 14th century, Petra became somewhat lost and obscure to the rest of the world, and so it remained for around 400 years. Only a few nomads and locals inhabited the area. Then, in 1812, a Swiss traveler persuaded his guide to take him to the site of the rumored lost city. Secretly making notes and sketches, he wrote, "It seems very probable that the ruins at Wadi Musa are those of the ancient Petra." Excavations begun in 1993 revealed several more temples and monuments that provide insight into the city's political, social, and religious traditions. In 1985, Petra was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Well, now let's take some time and look at these amazing sites here in this monumental city of Petra. There is so much to see at this site, as it's so rich in history and places. We'll look at the 18 top sites that are the most important and most visited at this place. And here you can see the route that we're going to be taking. The first place we'll see is the Spring of Moses, or Moses Spring. Nearby to the town of Wadi Musa, which means Valley of Moses in Arabic, is Moses' spring. According to tradition, this is the rock Moses struck in anger when the Israelites wanted water, as found in Numbers chapter 20. This act prohibited Moses from entering the Promised Land. 2 is the Petra Visitor Center. On the way to the Visitor Center, we pass through Wadi Musa. It's the town where Petra is located. The Visitor Center is at the entrance to the park and has a museum where you can see the history and artifacts of ancient Petra. So this right here is the entrance to the park. As we walk on the road to the ancient city, we come to the third spot, which is Djinn blocks, or God blocks. Many visitors miss the blocks in their hurry to reach the Siq, or also pronounced Siq, but they are worth a pause to speculate about their purpose. Some suggest they represent the start of tombs, or were associated with funerary dedications or the worship of water and fertility. The next site, number 4, is the Obelisk, Tomb, and Al-Siq Triclinium. It has 4 pyramid-type shapes built as funerary symbols by the Nabateans in the 1st century BC. The 4 obelisks, together with the eroded human figure in the center, probably represent the 5 people buried in the tomb. The next site, number 5, we come to the Siq, or pronounced Siq. This is a long road, about 1 mile or 1.2 kilometers, with breathtaking high walls on each side that leads to the ancient city. It served as protection to the city in ancient times. Its narrow vertical walls are undeniably one of the highlights of Petra. Along this road is a water channel once used for transporting water into the ancient city. The walk through this magical corridor as it snakes its way towards the hidden city is one of full anticipation for the wonders ahead, a point not wasted by the Nabateans, who made the passage into a sacred way, punctuated with sites of spiritual significance along the way. And this brings us to site number 6, the Treasury, also known as the Khazneh. It's the most famous and visited site of Petra. It's absolutely breathtaking. As you can see, it's the first sight you see after the majestic Siq walk. The Treasury is actually a large tomb. This is where most visitors fall in love with Petra. The Hellenistic facade is an astonishing piece of craftsmanship. Although carved out of iron-laden sandstone to serve as a tomb for the Nabatean king Aretas III from around 100 BC to around 200 AD, the treasury derives its name from the story that an Egyptian pharaoh hid his treasure here in the facade urn up above while pursuing the Israelites. Again, this is the treasury where the famous movie Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade was filmed. The seventh site is the Street of Facades. Just beyond the Treasury tomb and on the way to the main area of the ancient city of Petra lies many large facades. These line the street in a majestic manner, giving prestige to the walkway. Some of these buildings actually have large carved-out rooms in them. Site number 8 is the High Place of Sacrifice. It's a hike from the valley floor up to the high place, but is well worth it. The summit has a table for sacrificial ceremonies and is reached up a few hundred steps, working through the cliffs and ravines of the hill. This place has a spectacular view of the ancient city below and gives you a great view of everything. It's the most accessible of Petra's high places. This well-preserved site was built atop Jabal Madba with drains to channel the blood of sacrificial animals. The area was mainly used to sacrifice animals to the Nabatean god Dushara. It provides a sober and sad reality that false worship took place here. Many were misguided in believing that the worship of false gods helped them. Site number 9 is the theater. Originally, this was built by the Nabateans more than 2,000 years ago. The theater was chiseled out of rock, slicing through many caves and tombs in the process. It was enlarged by the Romans in around 106 AD to hold about 8,500 people, which was around 30% of the population of Petra at that time. An earthquake in 363 AD, the theater was partially dismantled to build other structures, but it remains a Petra highlight to this day. Site number 10 are the royal tombs. Downhill from the theater, the Wadi widens to create a larger thoroughfare. To the right, the royal tombs loom over the valley. Within its west-facing cliffs are carved some of the most impressive burial places in Petra, known collectively as the Royal Tombs. They look particularly stunning, bathed in the golden light of sunset. Among these tombs is the famous urn tomb, known as such by a large urn above the tomb. Also in this area is the palace tomb. It's distinctive among the royal tombs for its rock-hewn facade, the largest in Petra. Site number 11 is the Nymphaeum. At the start of the Colonnaded Street, or also known as the Cardo, is a public fountain built in the 2nd century AD and fed by water channeled from the Siq. Little can be seen today, although it's recognizable by the 450-year-old pistachio tree giving welcome shade in the summer. Site number 12 is the Byzantine Church. This church is also known as the Petra Church. It's a prime example of monumental architecture in the Byzantine era of Petra. It sits on an elevated ground in the city center north of the Cardo Street. It's one of 3 Byzantine churches on the hillside, the other 2 being the Ridge Church or Red Church and the Blue Chapel Church from the 5th and 6th century AD. The Byzantine Church is notable for its lavish and well-preserved mosaic decorations, and you can see here there is a tent-like structure to protect these mosaics. Found within its ruins were 140 papyri, which have provided scholars with valuable information about life in Byzantine Petra and its rural surroundings. An awning covers the remains of the church. Inside are some exquisite Byzantine floor mosaics that we mentioned, some of the best in the region. The mosaics originally continued up the walls. The Nabateans originally built the structure, and then it was redesigned and expanded by the Byzantines in around 530 AD. Site number 13 is the Temple of the Winged Lions. The Temple of the Winged Lions is a large Nabatean temple complex that dates to the reign of King Aretas IV in around 9 BC to 40 AD. The temple is located in Petra's so-called Sacred Quarter, where other temples are located as well. The temple was likely dedicated to the supreme goddess figure of the Nabateans, but the exact identity of this goddess is uncertain. The temple was ultimately destroyed in the massive earthquake at Petra in around 363 AD. Site number 14 is the Colonnaded Street or the Roman Cardo, and we'll refer to this more as the Cardo. Downhill from the Byzantine Church, the Colonnaded Street or the Cardo marks the center of ancient Petra. The street was built around 106 AD by the Romans. Columns of marble-clad sandstone originally lined the wide road and covered porticos on each side that gave access to shops. You can still see the remains of the original stones of the road to this day. At the end of the Cardo is a massive gate built by Roman Emperor Hadrian in around 135 AD. It's called the Tenemus Tor Gate. It was one of the main entrances to ancient Petra at this time. Site number 15 is the Great Temple. The Great Temple occupied a prime spot in ancient Petra. It was strategically located with a great view of many of the sites in the main Petra city area. It appears to have been a major Nabatean temple of the 1st century. It was badly damaged by an earthquake not long after being built, but remained in use until the late Byzantine period. It also appears that it might have been used as an administrative building at different points in its history. It's also somewhat unclear as to what deity it was dedicated. It is certainly one of Petra's most distinguished buildings, located at a key place in the city. As you can see, it was located directly to the right, just after entering Petra through the western main gate. This means it held a prominent value to the city. Site number 16 is Qasr Al Bint. Now, just after leaving the Great Temple and then the Cardo, you pass through the Temenis Tor Gate, and then it's a short walk down the road to Qasr Al Bint. This road would have been the main access to Petra during most of its existence. One of the few freestanding structures in Petra, this was built in around 30 BC by the Nabateans. It was later adapted to the cult of Roman emperors and destroyed around the 3rd century AD. Despite the name given to it by the local Bedouin, which is Castle of Pharaoh's Daughter, the temple was originally built as a dedication to Nabatean gods and was one of the most important temples in Petra. Site number 17 is the monastery, also known as Ad Dair. And this is quite a hike to get up here that we'll talk about in a moment. The monastery is one of Petra's remarkable rock-hewn buildings, standing at 160 feet tall and 148 feet wide, or 50 meters tall by 45 meters wide, making it the tallest facade in Petra. Its original purpose is uncertain, but it's believed to have been a temple dedicated to a Nabatean king, Obelisk I, although it may have also served other functions. It was likely built in the middle of the 1st century AD. To visit the monastery, as we mentioned, visitors must take an 800-step path from the basin and can enjoy views of the Wadi Araba valley below. It's quite the hike, but well worth seeing this amazing monument. Once you've arrived up on top, it's certainly one of Petra's best-known rock-cut monuments. It has an unfinished tomb facade that, during Byzantine times, was used as a church. Hidden in the high hills, the monastery is one of the legendary monuments of Petra. It's similar in design to the Treasury, but bigger. Its name comes from the crosses carved on the inside walls, suggesting its use as a church in Byzantine times, which would be around 350 to around 600 AD. Unbelievable. This is quite the sight to see. Once again, quite a hike up here, but well worth seeing. And lastly, site number 18 is Mount Hor. This site is about 3 miles or 5 kilometers from ancient Petra and is reached by vehicle and then some climbing. Crowning the top of Jabal Haron, this tomb encased in a 14th century whitewashed shrine is thought to be the last resting place of Aaron, the brother of Moses, according to Jewish, Christian, and local Muslim tradition. Christians have adopted this site as the authentic place since the Byzantine period and built a monastery here, serving as a pilgrimage center. The local Muslim tradition places Aaron's tomb at this site as well. The history of the current building dates back to the Mamluk era during the beginning of the 14th century. The mausoleum, or burial place, consists of a room and small courtyard. It has a white dome covering the entirety of the main room. Above the shrine's door is the date of its last remodel. The shrine of the prophet Aaron is located at the highest point in Petra at an altitude of 3,281 feet or 1,350 meters. The locals record the stories of its construction. It is visible from afar, catching the first and last day's light above the Petra hilltops. So this sums up all these amazing sites here in Petra. Again, there is so much to see, and these are the top choice sites that are most visited and are the most important. Now, what's amazing and what I found really surprising is how many biblical events actually took place in Petra. I thought it was just another big ancient city, but it's amazing all the biblical things that happened there and what appears will happen in the future. So let's look at these really interesting events that happened in the Bible here at Petra. The city of Petra is called by its Hebrew name Selah in the Bible. Both Petra and Selah mean rock, an appropriate name since much of the city is carved into sandstone cliffs. In Isaiah 16:1 it says, "Send the tribute lamb to the ruler of the land from Selah," which is modern-day Petra, "by the way of the wilderness to the mountain of the daughter of Zion," which would be to Israel. 2 Kings 14:7 it says, "He killed 10,000 of the Edomites in the valley of Salt and took Selah by war and named it Joktheel, as it is to this day." So Petra was called Selah, as we mentioned in the Bible, but then it was renamed to Joktheel at a period in the time of the kings. Petra was in the land of the Edomites, who were descendants of Esau. Israel and Edom constantly had conflicts, starting with Edom's refusal to allow Moses and the Israelites to pass through their land on their way to Canaan. It says in Numbers 20. Edom, however, said to him, this was the Israelites wanting to come into the promised land via this land of Edom, "You shall not pass through us. or I will come out with the sword against you." Again, the sons of Israel said to him, "We will go up by the road, and if I and my livestock do drink any of your water, then I will pay its price. Let me only pass through on my feet, nothing more." But he said, "You shall not pass through." And Edom came out against him with a heavy force and a strong hand. So Edom refused to allow Israel to pass through its territory. Then Israel turned away from him. However, it's believed that Petra was outside the border of Edom at this time and not inside Edom. According to what the Bible clearly says, and even tradition, Moses and the Israelites did pass through the Petra area outside of Edom. Local tradition says that the spring at Wadi Musa, the valley of Moses, just outside Petra, is where Moses struck the rock and brought forth water, as found in Numbers 20:10. Also, according to tradition, Jabal Haron, located at Petra, is Mount Hor, where Moses' brother Aaron was buried. Numbers 20:23 says, "Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron at Mount Hor by the border of the land of Edom, saying, Aaron will be gathered to his people." So once again, it's believed that Petra was outside the border of Edom at this time, as it says here in this passage, that Mount Hor was by the border of the land. So once again, Petra appears to be outside the border of Edom during this time in history, during the time that Moses and Aaron and the Israelites passed through this area. So Moses and the Israelites did pass through Petra, but they didn't pass through Edom, because once again, Petra was outside the borders of Edom. Now, King Saul and King David both fought the Edomites. It says in 1 Samuel 14:47, "Now when Saul had taken control of the kingdom over Israel, he fought against all his enemies on every side, against Moab, the sons of Ammon, Edom, the sons of Zobah, and the Philistines, and wherever he turned, he inflicted punishment." And again in 2 Samuel 8:13 it says, "So David made a name for himself when he returned from killing 18,000 Arameans in the Valley of Salt. He also put garrisons in Edom. In all Edom he put garrisons, and all the Edomites became servants to David, and the Lord helped David wherever he went." So it's amazing to just think that David was here in this area of Petra, and he made all of Edom and the Edomites his servants. During the reign of King Jehoshaphat, Edom invaded Judah but failed, and Israel was victorious in battle, as found in 2 Chronicles 20. Later, King Amaziah fought against Edom and took control of Petra, renaming it Joktheel, as we mentioned just a little bit earlier. It says in 2 Kings 14:7, "He killed 10,000 of the Edomites in the Valley of Salt and took Selah by war and named it to Joktheel, as it is known to this day." Now when King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon destroyed Jerusalem in 586 BC, the Edomites gave aid and comfort to the enemy, as found in Psalm 137. For this they were strongly condemned by the prophets Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Obadiah. The Edomites raided traveling caravans and then hid in Petra for protection. They became arrogant and abusive. For this reason, God judged them. And we read about this earlier, but I'll just read it again. It says in Obadiah 3:4, "The arrogance of your heart has deceived you, the one who lives in the clefts of the rock, on the height of his dwelling place, who says in his heart, who will bring me down to earth? Though you make your home high like an eagle, though you set your nest among the stars, from there I will bring you down, declares the Lord." Now Petra seemed secure in its unpenetrable fortress of rock for centuries, but today its ruins lie uninhabited, fulfilling Scripture. It says in Jeremiah 49:18, "As Sodom and Gomorrah were overthrown, along with their neighboring towns, says the Lord, so no one will live there, no people will dwell in it." Now we also see evidence of the Nabateans in the Gospels, and this is quite amazing. The Nabatean king Aretas IV's daughter married Herod Antipas, the son of Herod the Great. Herod's mother was a Nabatean. Aretas had a good relationship with Antipas until he divorced Aretas' daughter to marry his brother's wife, Herodias. Antipas's marital decision caused John the Baptist to condemn him, to which Herodias got her revenge when she persuaded her daughter to ask for John's head as a birthday present, as found in Matthew 14 and Mark 6. The Apostle Paul also had encounters with the Nabateans. We see later evidence of the Nabateans in both books of Acts and 2 Corinthians. This is quite amazing. After Paul converted to Christianity in Damascus, the Bible says he immediately went out to preach the gospel. Those who heard him were astounded that the same guy they had heard was killing Christians was now preaching that Jesus is the Christ. Paul's enthusiasm greatly upset the Jews in Damascus, and they sought to kill him, causing Paul to go into hiding. In Paul's letter to the Galatians, while describing his conversion to Christianity, Paul mentions his time in Arabia. So Paul was in this area. It says in Galatians 1:15, "When God, who had set me apart before I was born and called me through his grace, was pleased to reveal his Son to me, so that I might proclaim him among the Gentiles. I did not confer with any human being, nor did I go up to Jerusalem to those who were already apostles before me, but I went away at once into Arabia, and afterwards I returned to Damascus." Now many believe that Arabia at this time included Petra, so it's very likely that Paul would come to this area. It was a large city, and that he would spend time here in this city of Petra. Now let's look at some future prophecies about this Petra ancient city. It's believed that this is the place where the Israelites will flee and be protected by God during the second half of the Great Tribulation period. It says in Revelation 12:5, "And she gave birth to a son, a male, who is going to rule all the nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God and to his throne. Then the woman fled into the wilderness." This woman is talking about the nation of Israel. "Into the wilderness," or what's likely to be Petra, "where she had a place prepared by God, so that there she would be nourished for 1,260 days. Then in Micah 2:12, it talks about this. It says, "I will surely assemble, O Jacob, all of thee. I will surely gather the remnant of Israel. I will put them together as the sheep of Bozrah, as the flock in the midst of their fold." Now, Bozrah is the same name as Petra. "They shall make great noise by reason of the multitude of men." Now, Bozrah is in the area where Petra is located. It is also the Hebrew word for sheepfold. And then in Psalm 60, 8-12, it says, "Moab is my washbowl. I will throw my sandal over Edom. Shout aloud, Philistia, because of me. Who will bring you into the besieged city? Who will lead me into Edom?" So these are some of the things that happened here at Petra. Again, it's really surprising how many biblical events happened here, and that there's a great possibility that even more events will happen here in the future. Now, what are some faith lessons that we can gather and learn from this amazing site of Petra? Well, one thing is that Petra is where many biblical events took place that were prophesied, and where it's very likely more biblical prophecies will take place. Prophecy proves the Bible is true. So do we believe the Bible is true, and do we place our faith in it and trust it as our source for life and for guidance? The next faith lesson is that Petra is a witness to the rising and fall of its inhabitants. It reveals how short our time on earth is, and how God blesses and curses those who follow Him or don't? What about us? Do we realize that our time is short and that the most important thing for us is to be right with God? When I look at this ancient city of Petra and I look at its thousands and thousands of years of history, the people who came and went here, the kingdoms that rose, the kingdoms that fell, it causes me great pause to really think I have just a short window of time as I'm passing through this life. And the ruins here attest to that. When you think about the countless people that lived here, died here, and then went out of existence. So what about us? Are we right with our Creator? Do we allow this ancient city to speak to us, this mystic ancient city? And if it could speak, it would tell us life is short. And the most important thing for us is to be right with our Creator. So these are a couple faith lessons from this amazing site of Petra. Well, I hope that you have found this video very interesting and helpful and enlightening. Thanks for watching, and may God richly bless you.